Morning. Welcome to Grace Nazarene. Are you guys glad to be here? Anybody here glad to be at church? I am. All right, didn't Van do a great job? Aren't they awesome? I tell you what, thank you very much. I tell you, we are so fortunate to have the level of talent that we have in this church, and not only that they're willing to give it away. And willing to give their talents. But man, everybody, hopefully everybody had a great Thanksgiving. The stage looks festive, doesn't it? I worked so hard on this. I had nothing to do with this, actually. It had nothing to do with the decorations at our house either, and Cheryl can attest to that. So, but anyway, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you showed up. Carmen White helped us with the decorations of our church and just looked festive, and hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Anybody go out and get some stretchy pants last week? Anybody? Yes. Yeah, see? There were some, right? Yeah, so if you heard nothing of my message last week, the only thing people took away was, I've got to get some stretchy pants. So hopefully you got some stretchy pants and had a good Thanksgiving. I know that I filled mine out, and it was a good time. But just want to talk to you this morning. We're beginning a new sermon series this week and next week called Forget You. So welcome to church. So forget you, but it's kind of a saying. We've heard it. You've heard that saying, and it's kind of a play on words. But really want to spend some time really talking about how that we can actually become less, and God can come more, and less of us and more of Christ in our life. And I think we live in a culture today where we polish our profiles on Facebook, and everything is polished and looks great and looks nice, and we craft this ideal version of our life to share with the world. But what if we have that backwards? And I just want to spend a couple weeks of, just talking about, hey, instead of really just focusing on us and crafting this perfect image of ourselves, that we just look at the mirror and we say, forget you. Forget about ourselves and forget us for the next couple of weeks. But when you, and I don't know if you've ever met somebody like that. I don't know if you've ever met somebody that when you talk to them, that all they want to talk about is themselves. Anybody ever run into those people? And you just want to say, forget you. They're actually me monsters. And I have a little clip of a video. It's a little bit hard to hear, but I think this is a comedian that I like to watch, but just take a look. This kind of illustrates my whole point this morning, but just take a look at the video real quick.
I'm actually kind of quiet off stage. A lot of people don't realize that. I was at a dinner party recently. A bunch of people that I don't know. One guy talking plenty for everybody. Me, myself, right? And then I, and then myself, and me. I couldn't tell this one about I, because I was talking about myself, and then me. Beware the me monster.
So, I don't know. I just think that's funny. I don't know. But just beware of the me monster. And I think the me monster has a tendency to come out in us at different times. And we all do it. We're all guilty of it. And in fact, when I worked for the bank, there was one of the things, I went through a lot of sales training and management training. And one of the things they always told us to do when you're trying to build a relationship with somebody or try to sell them a product or that type of thing, and you're just meeting somebody for the first time, get them to talk about themselves. That was kind of the clue they give us. And so, why? Because we all love to talk about ourselves. We love to just say, well, this is what's going on in my life. This is what's going on. Here's my kids. Oh, did I show you my kids? And then you got out the pictures, and my kid's the smartest and the fastest, and then all of a sudden you become the one-upper that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's those people that you say, well, here's my kid. They got an A on there. Well, that ain't nothing. My kid's 4 points. It's just like the one-upper people. But you just want to say, forget you to those people sometimes. But really, a scripture basis, really want to talk about is, that we're guilty of that. And a scripture basis that I want to focus on the next couple of weeks is found in John chapter 3, verse 30. And it's a pretty simple passage of scripture. You could probably memorize it very, very easily. But it says this. It says, he must become greater and I must become less. Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple concept. He must become greater, I must become less. Just by a show of hands, if you're honest this morning, I love the show. Anybody super competitive here this morning? Anybody? Yes, I see those hands. I see you. I know. I'm glad my wife. I was watching to see if she raised her hand because she is one of the most competitive people I know. Like she can't run on the treadmill by herself without beating herself. I'm gonna be. It's like everything. And don't ever go canoeing with Cheryl because, like, if you go canoeing with Cheryl and you're in the same canoe, you will paddle your brains out. Because if somebody's in front of you in the canoe, it's like paddle harder. Faster! Can't be in second place. And I don't know if you know those people in your life that no matter what you do, everything turns into a competition. And I just thought of this, there were a couple months ago, we had to set up chairs in here. And, believe it or not, some of you may not know this, but these chairs actually get set up by people every week. I didn't know if you knew that. If some of you just came in and assumed that they all... Anyway, I digress. If you want to be on that team, stop by the Got Questions table after the church. But it was our turn to set up chairs in here on Saturday night, and we were in here, and I brought some friends with me, and all of a sudden it turned into this huge competition, and everybody had that side and this side, and we were throwing chairs to see who could. It was like we had this set up in 10 minutes. It was awesome, and we won. But, we have an example of this in Scripture, and I want to dive into the story this morning, and it's really a story of John the Baptist. And some of you maybe know who John the Baptist was. You hear about him every now and then at Christmas because he and Jesus were about the same age. They were born about the same time, but they were cousins. And John the Baptist, really, his sole purpose, if you read anything about him, was he was this guy. He lived in the wilderness. He was kind of like a mountain man, had the beard and the whole nine, just was a man's man, and he ate weird stuff, and he looked crazy, but people were drawn to him. People couldn't get enough of John the Baptist. The stuff that he was saying, he was baptizing people in the river, the people just flocked to him. People came out of the woodwork to try to figure out who John the Baptist was and who he was about, and people just were drawn to this guy. But the whole time he was doing it, he was the man. I mean, people were coming everywhere, and then something happened. Jesus showed up on the scene. And really, John the Baptist the whole time is telling people, hey, Jesus is coming, this guy's coming, his name's Jesus, you're not going to believe this guy, you think I'm something, you're not going to, wait till you see Jesus, he is going to blow your mind. And he was telling people all about Jesus. That was his sole purpose. And so, but what happened was, John the Baptist was such this guy that you wanted to be around. He had his own disciples. John the Baptist had these group of men that followed him around that were completely loyal to him. They followed him around. They went everywhere he went. They did everything. They were helping him. They were like his little helpers, and they were incredibly loyal. And what happened is when Jesus showed up on the scene and started baptizing people, Jesus started baptizing people, then all of a sudden John the Baptist's guys were like, hey, what's up with that? What's the big deal? And so that's where we pick this story up. It's John chapter 3, verse 26. John the Baptist disciples were coming to him, and they said this. It says, they came to John, and they said to him, Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, the one you testified about, well, he's baptizing, and everyone is going to him. Just throwing a fit. But you could just hear them whining. What's the big deal? Why is everybody going to him? You're the guy. We're following you. Everybody, now that he showed up, we're losing our flock. We're losing all of our following. All of a sudden it turned into this competition. It turned into this competition between Jesus' disciples and John the Baptist's disciples. And John the Baptist's disciples were throwing a fit here. And John's disciples were loyal, but they were a little frustrated that people were leaving John the Baptist and going to follow Jesus. And so it was really, they kind of over-exaggerated, and everybody said everyone is going to him, which probably wasn't true. Not everybody was. There was just a few people. It's funny how we tend to over-exaggerate stuff sometimes. But John chapter 3, verse 27, John had the perfect response to this. So these disciples are coming, John's disciples are coming to him and crying and whining that everybody's going to Jesus. And John said this in verse 27, no one can receive anything unless God gives it from heaven. And so you read that's a perfect response, and you're like, okay, I don't really understand what that means, Trent. What's he saying there? What's John saying? Basically, what he's saying is he's okay with second place. You know, we live in a culture where second place is what? Somebody tell me. The first loser. I heard it. Yeah. Second place is the first loser, right? We don't want to be second. You don't want to be second. Nobody wants to be second. We're competitive. We want to be first. We want to be the best at everything. We want to have the nicest stuff. We want to be the fastest, the smartest, the prettiest. We want to be first. We want to be first place. Anybody seen any of the I Am Second videos? You know what I'm talking about? A couple of you guys. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it. There. This was the first I Am Second video recorded in history. John the Baptist. You know why? You know what he said? Back in verse 27, he said, no one can receive anything unless God gives it to him from heaven, because John knew exactly what his place was. He knew exactly what he was put here to do, and he was okay being in second place behind Jesus, because he knew it was about Jesus. It wasn't really about him. It wasn't about who he had following. It wasn't about whether he became rich or famous. It was about Jesus. Always about Jesus. He always knew exactly his place. He spoke, if you read in that chapter, in chapter 3 of John, and you continue to read about what John talks about, he goes into this long litany about a wedding. And he begins to talk about the bride and the bridegroom. And he compares Jesus to the groom, and the church is his bride, and Jesus is coming. And so really, John likens himself to a wedding planner. He's like, hey, this isn't about me. It's really about Jesus coming here to save the earth and receive his bridegroom. But it's really not me. I'm just the planner. I'm just, John, in other words, is saying, I'm just the Facebook post announcement. It's just the Facebook saying, hey, show up at this day. Here's what's coming. Here's what's happening. John was really that chalkboard selfie of him saying, save the date. Jesus is coming. It was really about what he was about. He knew exactly what God was up to was bigger than he was, and he knew it wasn't all about him. And I think in our culture, we're taught to be the biggest and the best, and typically it's about our needs being met. We see John model a behavior that many of us struggle with. We see it everywhere in our culture. It's always about us. Even unconsciously, we do it. I mean, it's always about what we can do, where we can get. Some of you probably pushed somebody down at Walmart on Friday to get some towels. I don't know. Towels seem to be the biggest fights are over towels. Twitter, Facebook, if you look at our Twitter feed and our Facebook page and our giving and our everything is about self-preservation. It's about us. It's all about us. Everywhere we want to be first. To mature physically, we need to increase, but to mature spiritually, we need to decrease. Mother Teresa had a quote. I read a quote from her this week. I thought it was awesome. Thought it fit perfectly. It says, if you are humble, nothing will touch you, neither praise nor disgrace, because you know what you are. See, John knew exactly who he was. He knew exactly what God had called him to be. So all the praise that he got didn't matter to him. The fact that people left and went to Jesus, it didn't matter. He was humble, and he knew exactly who he was and what God had called him to do. This is really countercultural to our thought process, most of us. So I want to talk to you about 3 things on how we can be less about me and more about Jesus. And the first one this morning, if you're taking notes, is I lose my focus. Anybody here lose their focus easy? Happens to me all the time. I can be mid-sentence with Cheryl and be telling her a story and then stop and think about something. I'm like, squirrel. Completely lose my train of thought. I have no idea. And she'll like, what were you saying? I'm like, I have no idea what I was even talking about. I remember one time as a kid, we had, growing up, we had BB guns and all kinds of weaponry that we shouldn't have had probably. We had BB guns and pellet guns, and one of the favorite things I used to do with my grandpa he would just sit in a lawn chair, and then he would point out stuff for us to shoot. It's like, hey, can you shoot that? You bet. We'd just shoot stuff. We'd sit out there for hours. Hey, can you shoot that bumblebee? I'll try. Just whatever. And so one time I remember I was sitting there, and we were on the porch, and it was a summer day, and we were sitting out there, and he was in the lawn chair, and he's like, hey, shoot that ball right there. And it was just this ball laying in the yard. I'm like, please. So like, and then my dad picks up the ball. And he's like, he starts throwing it with my uncle back and forth, and they're just playing around in the yard, and I'm just completely focus lost. I had I forgot that I even had a gun in my hand. Focus lost, and this is like the gun safety no-no. But I was just standing there with the BB gun, watching them throw that ball, just completely enthralled in what this game of catch that they had going on, and then all of a sudden, ding! And I see my dad go, oh! Focus lost. Shot him in the belly. I think sometimes it's easy to lose our focus. And I think if we're really going to let him increase in our life, we have to lose focus. Typically losing focus is a bad thing. We have to focus on the right things. We need to lose our focus on the wrong thing. Let me read you a passage out of Hebrews. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down. I want to stop there for a second and underline that, but I want to stop there. What is it in your life that weighs you down from focusing on Christ and focusing on somebody other than yourself? Is it your schedule? Is it your finances? What is it? I just want you for a second to think this morning. I'm going to do this a couple times today, but I want you to think for just a second yourself. What is it that's weighing you down from really focusing on what you should be focused on? Let us strip off everything that slows us down, every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. And I underlined this part for us. You want to know how we do that? We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. You keep our focus on Christ through our week. It means when you leave here tomorrow, when you go to work, you keep your eyes focused on Christ. You go home, you come to your family, you go to bed, you do that, you do your routine, you get up Tuesday, you keep your eyes focused on Christ. That's how you're going to keep that priority. That's how he is going to increase and you are going to decrease. Won't be long, we live in like baseball mecca here, I feel like. It feels like everything in Salem revolves around baseball. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, because I did it with my own son, here after Christmas, probably turn to the first of the year, the batting cages are going to heat up. People are going to start, kids are going to start, you're going to have your kids in there because you want your kid to be the best because he's going to be drafted. And you want your kid to be the best, and he's going to hit the best and play the best and be the smartest and the fastest and all that stuff. So we'll get him in the batting cages in January. And the kids will stand there, and we'll hear this echoed across our community all summer long, as there will be some kid that's going to get up and step up to the plate, and he's got a helmet on that's too big, and maybe he's not the best, and he'll swing and he'll miss, and then all of the great parental coaches in the stands will say what? Keep your eye, I heard it, keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball, people. I saw a video this week of a kid that was hitting off a tee, trying to hit off a tee, and he swung and missed, and the parents, again, were like, hey, keep your eye on the ball. And the kid literally went up and put his eyeball on the... He's like, I'm not sure how this is helping me. Keep your eye on the ball. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. And I think really some of us are swinging and missing the mark because we've allowed our focus to be on ourselves and not on the world around us. We need to lose the focus on ourselves, but this goes against everything that is natural to us. And the reality is, if everything is important, then nothing is important. Do you realize that? Everything can't be important. Focusing on the things that Christ focused on means that there's life where there's death, there's hope where there's despair, there's good where there is evil, there's opportunity where there are obstacles, and there's love where there is hate. If you want to decrease and you want to experience the fullness of Christ this season like you've never felt him in your life before, he must increase, I must decrease. You got to lose your focus on yourself. And we're going to talk about that, what that means here in a little bit. But you got to lose your focus. The second thing, I have to lose my stuff. Let me read you a passage out of Ecclesiastes 5, chapter 5, verse 10. It says, whoever loves money never has money enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. Do you ever notice how emotionally we get attached to the stuff that we own? How emotionally attached we are to it? Your car, your agenda, all that stuff. I remember when we first started, when we had kids, Cheryl and I had kids, I always liked to keep my car clean. You know, it was just a thing. I like to keep it clean. I don't like junk on the floor. I don't like stuff. Some of us, Morgan got that gene from me. The rest of them didn't. But I always liked to keep my car clean. And I can remember when Cheryl and I first got married, when we started having kids, and like the first time a fry dropped, you were like, oh my gosh, pick it up. There's going to be a grease stain. It would drive me crazy. I hated that stuff. They would eat chicken nuggets, and then there was like ketchup squirted, and then like by the third milkshake spilled, in the vomit and everything else that goes with kids. I feel like when you have a kid, they ought to just give you like a cleaner. Here's a steam cleaner. There, kid, steam cleaner. Like all that stuff just happened in the car. I finally had to get to the point where I just was like, okay, I'm just going to let it go. Just letting it go. We'll trade this thing in if it makes it that far, and we'll just let it go. And maybe when they go older, we'll have a nice car again. But when you have kids, it's just impossible. But we get attached to that stuff. How about your agenda? We get so attached to our agenda. We protect that stuff. Like my schedule. And if somebody calls you and say, hey, can you give me a hand with this? You're like, don't answer it. Don't answer it. He's going to want me to come help. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that garbage. We wouldn't say that out loud, but we're thinking it. I really don't have time to go over there and help him do that. It's not what I really wanted to do today. Cast our agenda, our stuff, our kids playing sports. We think our kids are going to be the greatest stars on earth. We get attached to that. Sport parents, they just think their kid needs to play every day. You know, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, coach a pee-wee basketball team. Deal with mama. Get attached to our stuff, our family, our house. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24 says this: no one can serve two masters. Either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And I believe that many of us are under the impression that everything we have, our time, our money, our talents, our material possessions, everything that we think is ours, our stuff, everything that we own, your cars, your homes, your clothes, your shoes, your everything, we're under the impression that everything that we have is ours. And we create this sin, and by doing that, it creates a false sense of security in what we have. It's hard for us. I talked last week. It's hard for Americans to be dependent upon God because we have so much stuff. We have a lot of stuff. Does anybody have too much stuff? Do you have that one room in your house that when you open the door, you're like, oh my word, I don't even know what's in there. Shut it. Shut it. Just shut the door on it. Just pretend like I didn't see it. Seriously, no joke. At least once a year, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but at least once a year, Cheryl and I have to call G&G Services over in Centralia, and they deliver a roll-off dumpster at my house because I have so much junk. And we fill it up. Like every year, it's like, let's clean out the basement. And stuff that we've had that we keep in boxes on shelves and in the dry and in the warmth of our home that's taking up space in my life because it's just stuff. It's stuff that I keep, that I hold on to. And it's like, I don't want to get rid of my stuff. I love my stuff. We have to lose our stuff. I believe that so many of us do. We go to great lengths to protect our stuff. We protect it from thieves. We lock our cars. We lock our houses, our banks, our safes. We protect it from the elements. We buy something. We have to build a bigger garage to keep it in it so we can keep our stuff safe. We have an excess of stuff. And here's the thing this morning, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with having money and stuff. There really isn't. God has blessed us, and God has given you the talents and the ability and the smarts and the know-how to do things and be successful in business and life, and that's great. And He wants that for us. He does. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having money and stuff. However, there is something wrong with having money and stuff when the thought of losing it keeps us from experiencing the gift of generosity. Let me say that one more time. There's nothing wrong with having money and stuff. However, there is something wrong with having money and stuff when the thought of losing it keeps us from experiencing the gift of generosity. We have the thought of, I'm just not going to have enough. I want to give. When we come to the realization that everything we have belongs to God, when that actually clicks in your head, and you realize that your house and your car and your health and your family and your kids and your dogs and your shoes and your belts and your coats and your hats and your cars and your weed eater and everything that you have belongs to God and it's His first, when we come to that realization that we're just borrowing all this stuff and He says, hey, I'm going to let you borrow all this stuff, I'm going to bless you with this stuff and let you be a good steward of that. When we realize that, then we quit protecting it, and we say, when we realize that, we get to a place where God is just letting us borrow it, and we realize that it's not really ours, then we can begin to say things like this. We can begin to say things like, God, mi casa es su casa. A little Spanish for you. My house is your house. God, you've given me, you've blessed me with this home. How can I use it? My kids are your kids. You know, we did a baby dedication up here last week, and we dedicate our kids, and probably some of you as parents have had that done. At some point in time, you've brought your little kids up here and stood in front of the church, and you dedicated them to God, and you said, well, I'm going to give you to God, but I wonder if that really sinks in. Does that really sink in? Do you say, really, God, this is your child. He's yours. You do with it as you wish. We really understand that? When we really get a picture of that, we understand that everything we have, my things are your things, God. Just use them however you want to use them. You choose to bless me with it, help me understand how I can bless somebody else. Help me understand how I can teach my kids, and you've entrusted with me with these kids. Help me to teach them to come to church and be a good example, to do the things that I know I should do as a parent. We have a responsibility in that. So the second thing, we have to lose our stuff. The third thing, quite simply, is I have to lose my life. We have to get to a point in your life where your life is second, and His will for your life is first. And that's a hard place to get to. That's a tough place to get to. To get to yourself where you say, you know what? It's not about me. It's about God and what He wants for me in my life. That's a hard place to get to. It really is. Matthew chapter 10, verse 39. You've heard it before. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Scripture says this: whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. You know, we love life, and we look at the social media, and we fail to see the lives of people right in front of us. We're so enthralled with ourselves that everything that we do, our thoughts, our career, my career, our daily interactions that we have, our parenting, the moments we have alone, the values, the thing we're running our business, the things we watch, the things we listen to, the way we treat our spouses, the way we treat each other. Sometimes we do it unconsciously, but everything that we do seems to be about us. What's good for me? And so this morning I'm going to challenge you to just look in the mirror and say, forget you. For once, forget you. Forget about what's important to you. And ask that God would become more and that you would become less. We do it unconsciously sometimes. Anybody take a group picture? Like when you take a group picture and you look at the group picture, who's the person you look at first in the group picture? Who is it? Is it you? You always have that one person that you take a group picture and everybody's perfect, and then that one person's like not, and you're like, sorry, we're posting it. No, please don't post that. Look at my hair, or look at the way I look, you know? Huh? Some of you are like that. Please don't post that. Oh, look at me. I look retarded. You always have that one, and it's always me in the picture. I'm always looking like. But we do it unconsciously. Unconsciously, I think we just walk through life, and it's really about what's convenient for me, what makes me happy, where do I want to eat, what do I want to see, what do I want to watch, what do I want? I just had this thought. I'm going to ask the band to start coming up. But I had this thought this week. It says, what would happen? I just had this, it's overwhelming, and I think about this a lot, but I just wonder, what would happen in a church this size if everybody that's here, sitting where you're sitting, every single one of us, what would happen if for a moment we would direct our focus away from ourselves and onto one or two different people? One or two people. What would happen if each one of you and me, all of us here, for a second stopped thinking about ourselves and said, you know what, I'm really going to be focused on somebody else? What's that look like? It means taking a personal interest in them. Not surface, not saying, hey, how are you doing? But really taking a personal interest in their lives. Devoting your time and your resources to that person. Mature Christians mentoring new Christians. Not judging, not condemning, but just saying, hey, I know you're new in your faith. Is there something I could do? Can I answer a question for you? Can I be there for you? Can I pick you up for church? Can I help make sure that you got something to do on Friday night when all your friends are partying? And really, I know you need a distraction. I'll be there. Why don't you come over to my house? It's inconvenient. We don't want to do it. What would happen if we started taking accountability for someone's spiritual well-being? Each one of you. I'm going to challenge you, each one of you. Who are you mentoring? Who are you? All of you are here at church. At some point in time, you've had maybe some kind of belief. Maybe you haven't. But who are you making sure makes it to heaven? Is there anyone in your life that you are concerned if they would die today that they wouldn't make it? And if so, what are you doing about it? Somebody outside of your immediate family, who are you concerned with? Do you want to grow spiritually? Start caring for somebody else spiritually. Start trying to be a mentor. Say, hey, why don't you come to church with me? Hey, why don't I pick you up? You should seriously. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, Trent, you're a preacher. You could say, I don't know what to tell them. I don't know nothing about the Bible. I don't know that. What would happen if we were just honest and said, hey, listen, I don't have it all figured out, but I know what Jesus did for me. I know what he does for me. It makes me a better person. What would happen if every one of us just started sharing that with one person? That people actually knew that there was a church and believers that cared, that there was somebody that was okay being second. It didn't have to be first all the time. Who is it that you're making sure is going to make it? We have to lose our life. That's what it means to lose your life. Read a quote this week, and it said, it makes no sense to attempt to save our lives on earth only, to lose everything when we live our lives quickly and inevitably pass away. The wise course is to invest our earthly resources, our time, our talents, and wealth in what is eternal. Even if we lose our life for Jesus' sake, that investment will produce returns for all eternity. And I think sometimes you have to preach to yourself. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and you say, why am I doing this? Why am I going over here across town to pick this person up? Why am I doing this? Why am I spending money on this person? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? You have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, forget you. When it feels like your spirit is willing but your flesh is weak, and you say, why am I doing that? You say, because I'm going to forget you. When it inconveniences me and it's all about my schedule, just look at the mirror and say, forget you. Serve in the church. Why would I do that? Why would I serve in the church? Why would I do that? You look in the mirror and you say, forget you. It's not about me. Always amazed that people come to church and feel like this isn't about us. You want to grow spiritually? I challenge each and every one of you to start serving somebody other than yourself. The person hurt me, and I deserve to be mad. Forget you. Let it go. Just forget you for a second. In order to forget yourself, we need to understand that God doesn't forget us. And I want to leave you with this morning. Isaiah 49:15 says, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child that she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you." 2016 years ago, God looked down on this earth and he said, you know what? I'm going to remember those people. It's not about me. It's about what I can do to provide a Savior to come into this earth and save each and every one of us. John modeled it. We can model it. It was the perfect example of being second. It's okay to be second. Let me pray with you this morning. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your grace and your love and your forgiveness. God, I pray that you would just help us to get a grip on what it is to serve other people, to really take a personal interest in somebody other than ourselves, and really to put our schedule aside, put our finances to the side, our financial concerns, put our time, our family. God, help us to invest in other people this year. Help us to really just to look in the mirror and say, I'm going to forget me for a second. I'm going to forget what's important to me, what I like, what I want, the desires and hopes and dreams that I want, and I'm going to look at others around us and see what I can do to help them. God, help us to be that kind of church. Help us to be that kind of place where we can walk out into our community and be for other people. Help people to understand that Grace Church of the Nazarene, and not even just our church, God, but that as Christian people and as followers of Jesus Christ, that we are about you and we are about them. God, thank you so much for this church and the time that we have here this morning. Thank you for letting us celebrate the holidays and the gifts that we have that we take so for granted. God, we're blessed people. Thank you for each that have come this morning. I pray, Lord, that you would just help us to encourage us to let you increase and us decrease over these next few weeks as we enter through the holidays. Thank you so much for your love and your care and your patience for us. In your name I pray. Amen. I want to thank you and ask Cheryl to come, and Cheryl's going to just close you guys out with some announcements. Thank you for being here, guys.